Let me tell you something that might shock you. If you talk to yourself out loud in full conversations, you might not be weird. You might be wildly intelligent. We've been taught that talking to ourselves is embarrassing, childish, a little unstable. But what if I told you that it's actually a sign your brain is doing something extraordinary? When you talk to yourself, you're not losing control, you're organizing chaos, you're processing emotion, you're rehearsing courage, you're turning confusion into clarity. That's not weakness, that's cognitive power. Highly intelligent people often externalize their thinking. They ask themselves hard questions. They challenge their own assumptions. They say, why did that hurt? Or what am I afraid of right now? The self-awareness in motion. And here's the beautiful part. When you speak your thoughts out loud, your brain activates differently. You engage problem-solving pathways. You slow impulsive reactions. You literally coach yourself through uncertainty. That's not weird. That's brave. Because most people run from their thoughts. They drown them in noise. They scroll. They numb. But the intelligent mind, it leans in. It listens. It wrestles with itself. If you've ever paced the room, whispering through a dilemma, if you've ever practiced a difficult conversation alone, if you've ever said, okay, let's figure this out to yourself, you're not strange. You're thinking deeply, and deep thinkers change the world. Let's talk about something people misunderstand about you. You get bored fast in conversations that skim the surface, in routines that feel repetitive, in environments that don't challenge you. And maybe you've judged yourself for that. Maybe someone called you restless or never satisfied. But I want you to hear this clearly. Chronic boredom is often a sign of an understimulated, highly intelligent mind. Your brain craves depth. Highly intelligent people have nervous systems that light up with novelty and complexity. When there's no growth, no new angle, no meaningful exchange, your energy drops, not because you're lazy, not because you're ungrateful, but because your mind is wired to expand. You don't just want information. You want insight. You don't just want activity. You want meaning. And when you don't get it, you feel trapped. That discomfort you feel in shallow spaces, that's awareness. That's your brain saying there's more here. Dig deeper. Intelligent people struggle in environments where curiosity is punished and conformity is rewarded. You don't thrive in autopilot mode. You thrive when you're learning something that stretches you, when you're something that scares you a little, when you're surrounded by ideas that challenge your beliefs. Boredom for you isn't emptiness, it's hunger. Hunger for growth, hunger for connection, hunger for truth. And here's the hard part. When you don't feed that hunger, you can start doubting yourself. You may think something is wrong with you, but nothing is wrong. Your mind just refuses to live small. And that refusal, that's intelligence asking for expansion. Let's be honest. You don't just think, you rethink. You replay conversations at 2 a.m. You analyze tone shifts, word choices, facial expressions, pauses, and somewhere along the way, someone told you that makes you dramatic or anxious or too much. But here's what I want you to understand. Overthinking is often the shadow side of deep intelligence. Highly intelligent people don't skim life. They dissect it. They search for patterns. They look for meaning beneath the surface. When something happens, your brain doesn't say, oh, well. It says, wait. What did that mean? That's not weakness. That's awareness. Now, yes, unregulated overthinking can become rumination. It can trap you in fear. But at its core, that intense mental replay is your mind trying to understand the emotional architecture of the moment. You're not just reacting. You're investigating. You want clarity. You want truth. You want to know where you stand. Intelligent minds crave coherence. They don't tolerate unresolved tension easily. And here's the powerful part. When you learn to guide your overthinking instead of shame it, it becomes discernment. It becomes emotional intelligence. It becomes the ability to read rooms, predict outcomes, sense shifts before others notice them. That why did they say it like that question, that's pattern recognition. That sleepless replay, that's your brain trying to integrate experience. The goal isn't to stop thinking deeply. The goal is to think with compassion instead of fear. Because when you harness it, your so-called overthinking becomes insight. And insight is a superpower. Let me say something that might set you free. If you need alone time, if silence feels like oxygen, if being by yourself restores you instead of scares you, that's not antisocial. That's intellectual and emotional depth. Highly intelligent people often crave solitude, not because they hate people, but because their inner world is rich, complex, alive. When you're alone, you think, you create, you process, you imagine possibilities that don't exist yet. Solitude isn't emptiness for you. It's expansion. And here's what most people don't understand: being alone requires courage. Because when you sit in silence, there's no distraction, no applause, no validation. It's just you and your thoughts. And only someone with emotional capacity can tolerate that. Many people avoid solitude because it forces them to face discomfort. But you walk into it, you reflect on your mistakes, you replay your growth, you question your beliefs, you sit with your feelings instead of numbing them. That's maturity. That's intelligence at work. Research even shows that highly intelligent individuals often prefer fewer but deeper social connections. You don't crave noise. You crave substance. Small talk drains you. Meaningful dialogue energizes you. Time alone resets you. And sometimes you've felt guilty about that, like you should be more social, more available, more normal. But here's the truth. Your ability to enjoy your own company means you are not dependent on constant external stimulation. You generate your own depth. And when someone can be alone without feeling lonely, when they can sit in quiet without running, that's not isolation. That's inner strength. Let's talk about the habit that probably got you labeled difficult. You ask why. A lot. Why is this done this way? Why do we believe that? Why are we following this rule? Why does everyone just accept this? And sometimes people get uncomfortable around you because questioning disrupts comfort. It shakes certainty. It exposes cracks in systems people would rather not examine. But questioning is not rebellion for the sake of chaos. It's intelligence refusing to settle. Highly intelligent people struggle with blind acceptance. Your brain doesn't like loose logic. It doesn't tolerate weak foundations. When something doesn't add up, you feel it. Almost physically. You don't question because you want to argue. You question because you want to understand. That's depth. That's intellectual integrity. You are not satisfied with because that's how it's always been. You want evidence. Meaning? Context. You want to see the architecture behind the belief. And here's the courageous part. Questioning often comes with social risk. People may call you skeptical, cynical, stubborn. But the world changes because someone asked, what if we're wrong? Progress begins with discomfort. When you question, you're not tearing things down blindly. You're testing strength. You're searching for truth that can withstand pressure. And let me be clear, this habit becomes powerful when it's paired with humility. When you're not just questioning others, but also yourself. Why do I believe this? Where did this fear come from? Is this story I'm telling myself even true? That's emotional intelligence layered onto intellectual courage. So if you've always felt like the one who pokes holes in assumptions, the one who can't just nod and move on, you're not difficult. You're awake. Let's clear up one of the biggest myths about intelligence. Being highly intelligent does not mean being emotionally detached. In fact, it's often the opposite. You feel everything, the shift in someone's tone, the tension in a room, the disappointment behind a smile, the beauty in a quiet moment. And sometimes it overwhelms you. You've probably been told you're too sensitive, that you take things personally, that you should toughen up. But what if your sensitivity is not fragility? What if it's advanced emotional processing? Highly intelligent people often have heightened emotional awareness. Your brain doesn't just register facts, it registers nuance, subtext, micro expressions, emotional undercurrents. You don't just hear words, you hear meaning. And yes, that can be exhausting because when you're wired this way, you don't move through life numb. You absorb it. You analyze it, you empathize deeply, you carry layers that other people don't even notice. But here's the strength inside that intensity. You connect deeply, you love fiercely, you understand complexity in human behavior, you can hold contradiction without collapsing. That is emotional intelligence, and it is powerful. The world sometimes rewards emotional distance because it looks strong. But real strength is being able to feel fully without losing yourself. When you learn to regulate your intensity instead of shame it, it becomes intuition. It becomes insight into human behavior. It becomes leadership. It becomes compassion with boundaries. Your depth of feeling is not a flaw. It's proof your mind and heart are working together. And that combination, that's rare. Let's be honest, small talk drains you. How's the weather? What do you do? Busy week, you can do it. You know how to smile, nod, participate. But inside, you feel restless, disconnected, almost hungry for something more. And maybe you've wondered, why can't I just enjoy normal conversation like everyone else? Here's why. Highly intelligent minds crave depth over surface. Your brain lights up when the conversation turns meaningful. When someone says, "What are you afraid of lately?" or "What changed you?" or "What do you believe about love?" you don't just want to exchange information. You want to exchange truth. Small talk feels like skimming the surface of an ocean you know has miles of depth underneath. And intelligent people can feel that depth constantly. It's almost painful to ignore it. You want context. You want perspective. You want emotional honesty. And here's the courageous part: choosing depth makes you vulnerable. Because when you steer conversations toward meaning, you risk rejection. You risk someone saying, "That's too much." You risk being misunderstood. But shallow interaction feels lonelier to you than silence. You would rather sit quietly than pretend connection. That's not arrogance. It's alignment. You're wired for substance. For layered conversations that stretch your thinking and soften your heart at the same time. So if you've ever felt out of place in rooms full of surface level chatter, it's not because you're socially broken. It's because your mind and heart are built for depth. And depth isn't common. It's powerful. Let me say something bold. One of the clearest signs of intelligence is this: you are willing to admit you were wrong. And that is not weakness. That is courage. Highly intelligent people don't cling to beliefs just to protect their ego. They don't double down just to win. When new evidence shows up, when better information enters the room, they pause. They reconsider, they evolve. And that can feel disorienting because changing your mind means letting go of certainty. It means saying, the old version of me didn't have all the facts. It means tolerating discomfort. Most people would rather protect their pride than pursue the truth. But you care more about accuracy than applause. You've probably experienced this. You believe something strongly. Then you learned more. You reflected. You wrestled with it. And slowly you shifted, not because you're inconsistent, but because you're growing. Intelligent minds understand that identity is not a cage. It's a living, breathing thing. It adapts, expands, it refines itself. You don't see being wrong as humiliation. You see it as data. That ability to update your worldview, to integrate complexity, is a powerful cognitive trait. It shows flexibility, nuance, emotional regulation. And let's be honest, it also requires humility. To say, "I see this differently now," takes more strength than stubbornly defending a cracked foundation. So if you've ever felt embarrassed by how often your perspectives evolve, don't be. Rigid minds stay loud. Intelligent minds stay open. And openness, that's how you keep becoming wiser. Here's something fascinating about you. You see connections where others see chaos. You notice patterns in behavior, in numbers, in events, in emotions. You detect cycles that most people completely miss. And it's not just curiosity, it's your brain working at a higher level, constantly mapping the world. Highly intelligent people are pattern seekers. You unconsciously scan environments, conversations, relationships, even your own thoughts, looking for consistency, contradictions, and hidden meaning. That ability gives you foresight, a sense of what might happen before anyone else even registers it. But this can feel like a burden Because while others walk through life on autopilot, your mind is running simulations 24/7. You connect dots, predict outcomes, and anticipate mistakes. That can be exhausting. That can feel lonely. People often call it overthinking or being too analytical, as if your superpower is a flaw. Yet, this constant pattern recognition is intelligence in action. It allows you to solve problems faster, see opportunities others miss, and navigate complexity with grace. Emotional patterns, you spot them. Social dynamics, you understand them. Personal habits, you notice the underlying mechanisms that make someone tick. And here's the beauty. This isn't just about intellect. It's also empathy. Because seeing patterns in people's behavior allows you to understand, predict, and even help them in ways they can't articulate themselves. You notice what others ignore. You connect the invisible threads. You anticipate the unseen currents. And that, my friend, is what makes you extraordinary. Here's the final truth about your mind. You don't run from complexity. You lean into it. You thrive in ambiguity. You feel at home in gray areas where most people panic. You wrestle with paradox, contradiction, and nuance because your brain refuses the simplicity that others settle for. Highly intelligent people understand that life is messy. People are messy. Decisions are messy. And instead of avoiding that mess, you engage it. You sit with discomfort. You wrestle with hard questions. You hold multiple perspectives at once without collapsing under the weight. And yes, it's exhausting at times. The world loves shortcuts, certainty and clear lines, but you know the richness, the growth, and the truth that exists in the shadows of complexity. You understand that answers are rarely final, and yet the pursuit itself is invaluable. This is the mark of courage, not fearing difficulty, not shying from uncertainty, not settling for easy truths. Your mind is alive, curious, resilient. Every habit we've discussed, talking to yourself, boredom, overthinking, loving solitude, questioning everything, feeling deeply, avoiding shallow talk, updating your beliefs, seeing patterns, they all converge here. You embrace life fully, and your intelligence is inseparable from your courage and curiosity. So if you've ever doubted yourself for being different, for feeling too much, for thinking too deeply, hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not strange. You are extraordinary. Your so-called weird habits, they are your superpowers. Lean into them. Honor them, and know that your mind, with all its intensity, depth, and brilliance, is exactly what the world needs. That is the quiet strength of a highly intelligent soul.